Mr. Repke here. We need to talk about calculator usage before our next chapter, Chapter 7. We will be using the calculators a lot. We will be entering numbers into Canvas a lot. So we need to make sure that we know how to use our calculators. Before we get into using our calculators, let's review one concept here, and that is if x squared equals 4 and I want to solve for x. So I take the square root of both sides. X equals what? And you might think, Mr. Repke, that's really easy. Why are you even asking? Well, if I'm asking, maybe it's because it's not that easy. And hopefully when you answered, you said, Mr. Repke, not only does x equal 2, x equals a positive or negative 2. Remember, anytime we're solving for an equation, and we solve for these numbers, we need pluses and minuses in front of our number. Because look, if I took that back into our original equation, and I checked negative 2, and I said, does negative 2 squared equals 4? Absolutely. And does positive 2 squared equal 4? Absolutely. So anytime you find a square root with these equations, we need a plus or minus. So for instance, if I said x squared equals 6, what would x equal? Well, square roots of both sides. We do not know the square root of 6. And again, remember, positive or negative 6. But now you say, Mr. Repke, that's all well and good. That's pretty easy. But here's my question. How would you put that into Canvas? Well, there's no square root button that you can use on a keyboard. So we need to go back over to our calculator, and we need to be able to change positive or negative 6 into decimals to put into Canvas. I'll show you that. We're going to do second. X squared, which will give me the square root button, and I'm going to hit 6. So we're going to round to the hundredths place. I will write that down, which you should know is 2 places after the decimal. And what is 2.449489743 rounded to the hundredths place? Did you say 2.45? I sure hope so. But that's just the positive answer. We said it could be a positive square root or a negative square root of 6. Well, that's easy, but I'll do it anyway. Negative 2.45. So in Canvas, if you had to type this in, and you will get directions in the future, but how we're going to do it, the largest number first, rounded to the hundredths place, a comma, and then the smaller number. No spaces, absolutely no spaces. So if you had to type this into Canvas, you would type in 2.45, comma, negative 2.45. Let's try a few others. What if we ended up with an answer that was 2 plus or minus 5/3? Well, we could just keep it with as a number plus or minus a fraction. Let's do our plus first. And anytime we do a fraction, we're almost always going to need parentheses. It will never hurt if we do parentheses. So let's try 2 plus 5/3. That would be 3.67. And my minus 2 minus 5/3. That is just 0.33. And again, in Canvas, you're going to type your larger number first, a comma, and your smaller number, just like that. Now, you might have said you would want this to be one big fraction. Well, if we put everything over 3, what does the 2 change to? If we're putting, instead of a 2 over 1, if we put it over 3, then it would become a 6, correct? 6 plus or minus 5 over 3. If you did it this way, what would it look like on your calculator? Let's do the plus first. 6 plus 5. That's our numerator divided by 3. 3.67. And now we do our minus. 6 minus 5, that's my numerator, divided by 3.33. So again, it doesn't matter if you want to keep it as a number and a fraction or make it one big fraction, as long as you do so correctly. When we type them into our calculator, we should get the same answer either way. Now you know we've been dealing with square roots, so what if our answer looked like this? 5 plus the square root of 10. Or, I'm sorry, 5 plus or minus the square root of 10. Well, let's do the plus first, because that's obviously going to give us our larger answer. Let's do 5 plus the square root of 10. Round to the nearest hundredths, 8.16. And when I do the minus, 5 minus the square root of 10, $1.84. 1.84. Be careful when you round. The 7 tells us that our 3 rounds up. So again, in Canvas, you would type 8.16, comma 1.84. No spaces. Larger number first. Another example. 3 plus or minus square root of 5 over 2. And again, you can leave it as a number plus or minus a fraction, or you could change it to one big fraction. If we changed this to a one big fraction, what would the 3 change to? The 3 out in front would change to a 6, correct, because right now it's 3 over 1. If we put it over a 2, we would have to multiply by 2. So either way is correct. Some of you will do it one way, some of you will do it the other way, and that is fine. If we did the left way, let's do the left on the calculator with the plus. Well, it's 3 plus, and again, anytime we deal with a fraction, we need parentheses. Square root of 5. And on my calculator, I need to hit the right arrow to get away from the square root. On your calculators provided by the school, you need to hit the end of the parentheses to close the parentheses. And then we're going to divide by 2 and then end our fraction. And that gives me 4. Remember, we're rounding to the nearest hundredths. 4.12. The 8 tells me that the 1 rounds up. Let's do it with a minus. Oops. Divided by 2. And I get 1.88. What if we made it one big fraction? What would that look like on your calculator? That would be 6 plus the square root of 5 divided by 2, because that was just our numerator. And again, we have to round correctly. And notice that it doesn't matter which way I do it, I get the exact same answer. These decimals are the exact same. Now let's do it with the minus. If you did it with one big fraction, that would be our numerator, and divide by 2. And again, I don't care which way you do it, if you keep it as a number plus minus a fraction, or make it one giant fraction, your numbers come out to be the same, and when you put them in Canvas, larger number first, separated by a comma, no spaces. All right, so those are pretty easy, Mr. Repka, because we always have numbers. What about this? What if we got a problem like this? 4 plus or minus the square root of -3. Oof. How do I do -3? Well, just showing in our calculator, if we did square root -3, oh boy, error. Because we know that there's no such thing as negative square roots. So what this really means is 4 plus or minus I square roots of 3. Correct? You should know that. Now, do we know what the square root of 3 is? Absolutely, 1.73. So what would this look like if we added 4 plus 1.73i if we subtracted 4 minus 1.73i? And that's exactly how we would type it into Canvas. No spaces. No spaces. Use the plus first, the minus second. So you would just do 4 plus 1.73i, comma, 4 minus 1.73i. Hopefully you did these along with the video. You were able to get the same answers I did. Now do your worksheet, enter them into Canvas. Be very careful. You can use your notes from this video because I want to make sure you can get the right answers when you put them into Canvas.